The England squad is set for the World Cup in Qatar. A lot of absentees and a lot of introductions to this team for Gareth Southgate. Luis Miguel Echegaray here, LME, ESPN SC. Rob Dawson. Rob, how are you, my friend? Give me just your initial reaction, as obviously as everybody's following and watching us, and we'll go through every position and every side of the squad. But just give me your initial reactions of this squad.
I think that the big headline is obviously James Maddison. There was a more than a strong suggestion that despite his form for Leicester, that he wasn't going to make it. He's been the player that lots of England fans have been desperate to see in the squad. There have been huge calls for him to be included. It looked even very sort of late on last night that he wouldn't be included, but the announcement's been released and he is in the 26-man squad, which is going to make England fans very, very happy.
Absolutely. James Maddison is definitely the highlight here. Tremendous performances for Leicester City. It was, quite entertaining at the beginning of the day. Some were saying, no, he's not making it. Others were saying, yes, he's in. So good to see for the Leicester man to be in the squad. But let's go through it. Obviously, the goalkeeper situation is really not that surprising. Jordan Pickford, Nick Pope, Aaron Ramsdale. We knew that those were going to be the three. And then at the back, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Connor Cody, Eric Dyer, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, John Stones, Kieran Trippier, Kieran Walker, and of course, Ben White from Arsenal. Some omissions there. I've got my own issues with some of those defensive names. Talk to me straight away defensively. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think we've seen Southgate rely on the players that he's trusted in the past. Everyone will know that Harry Maguire hasn't played a lot of football for his club since August. He's been injured in that time as well. Kyle Walker as well has been injured since the Manchester derby and hasn't played at all. The likelihood is that he probably won't play at the weekend either, but both of those names are in. Other than that, Ben White, I think, has probably played his way in because of his form for Arsenal. He's a little bit more versatile than some of the other contenders because he can play at right back, where he's been playing for Arsenal, and can play at centre back as well. I mean, really, with the defence, we're all waiting to see whether Gareth Southgate is going to play with 5 at the back or 4. The general consensus is that he prefers to play with 4 defenders, but because of the options he has available, we'll probably go back to a back 3, which means playing 3 centre halves. Kyle Walker in that is very, very key because he can also play as a right-sided centre back and also a right wing back. So it's probably the reason why he's been in, even though he's been injured and hasn't played at all recently. The other notable thing is that there's no second left back. There are options at right back. Obviously, they've got Trent Alexander-Arnold in there. They've got Kieran Trippier. On the left, they've only really got Luke Shaw, who's the out-and-out left back. I suppose Gareth Southgate is looking at someone like Kieran Trippier and possibly thinking that he could fill in at left back if there was an injury to Luke Shaw. I mean, that looks a little bit like a fudge because, you'll see most of the squads that are announced by the World Cup nations will have 2 left backs, 2 right backs, and a lot of options at centre half. Gareth's obviously gone for just 1 left back, probably because Ben Chilwell isn't fit. If he had been fit, probably he would have been in. Obviously, he can't be because he's not fit. So he's had to pick another defender. Possibly that's Ben White. That's the reason why Ben White's got him. But there are some notable absentees. I mean, Tyrone Mings has been playing well for Aston Villa. Obviously, a left-footed centre half. He can balance out the defence a little bit better. And also Tomori, who's playing for AC Milan, had a great season at AC Milan last year as they won their Serie A title. Probably hasn't been in that same form at the start of this season and had 2 poor games against Chelsea in the Champions League. But he can probably count himself a little bit and lucky not to be in there.
Yeah, we have a few questions coming in. I'm just going to chime in here and just echo some of the things that you said. To me, the issue with Gareth Southgate, and we can't take anything away from Southgate, what he's done recently, right? He took England to the semi-finals of the last World Cup. Only Sir Bobby Robson did that last time around in 1990. The final Euro 2020 to lose at penalties as well. Sometimes, though, Rob, I feel like Southgate is such a loyalist that the issues when it comes to tactics and formations and the system, instead of favoring the players that can diversify the system. You mentioned Fikayo Tomori. He is an absolute outstanding center back. The fact that he's not in the squad baffles me a little bit. You mentioned the left-sided, side. Tyrone Mings, selfishly, I'm obviously going to be angry about Tyrone Mings not being there. But to your point, I understand about how Kieran Trippier, even though the left side position is not his favorite, he can cover it if that something happens to, of course, Manchester United's Luke Shaw. We have some questions, Rob. So let's just go back a little bit very quickly. Should Aaron Ramsdale be England's number 1, Rob Dawson?
Yeah, I mean that is a good question, and it probably shows how nailed down that spot is with Jordan Pickford. That isn't really a debate in England. Aaron Ramsdale has been fantastic for Arsenal this season. Arsenal are playing fantastically well. His distribution at Arsenal is great. He's playing under a manager, under Miguel Arteta, that wants him to do that. There have been questions about Jordan Pickford in the past, but not really this season. And it would be a huge surprise if Pickford didn't start that first game of the World Cup. Should it be more of a debate? Possibly. But you're heading into a World Cup just sort of days away, and you need to have that goalkeeper spot nailed down. So maybe Gareth is thinking that he needs a bit of stability there. Again, we're talking about a player who was tried and tested under Southgate, and we're going to talk about that a lot, I imagine, when we go through the squad. Southgate's preference is for players that he trusts, he knows can do a job for him and done a job in the past, and Jordan Pickford is definitely that.
Yeah, he's a loyalist, and Jordan Pickford has shown over and over again that he can be the number one goalkeeper. I'm with you. I think Jordan Pickford has this, but it's a good problem to have for Gareth Southgate and England fans. These are three excellent goalkeepers, both playing tremendous football right now. So the answer, I think, from both of us is I think Pickford will take this one. Let's go to the next one here, Rob, by the way. Trent Alexander-Arnold, a lot of ups and downs for him, criticism left, right, and center. But on his day, Rob Dawson, he could be the best right back in Europe, not just for England. Obviously, Gareth Southgate sees that. There is the diversifying prospect of also him being not just a right back, but an attacking right wing back. As of course, what do you make about Trent Alexander-Arnold and him starting, not just being part of the squad?
I mean, he certainly deserves his place in the squad. I think it would have been a major surprise had he been left out, given what he's done for Liverpool over the last couple of seasons. Again, though, we're looking at a player who, if you go back off sort of past history, Southgate hasn't really trusted. He's not played an awful lot of games under Southgate, which is particularly surprising given that Liverpool, with him in the team, have been almost unstoppable for the last couple of years. There is an argument that if Southgate is going to play with three centre halves and wing backs, that you can maybe hide Trent's defensive deficiencies better with him at right wing back. In that case, then you have Trippier, who Southgate loves, possibly challenging Luke Shaw on the left a little bit more. We talked before as if Luke Shaw was just definitely going to start a left wing back. Well, if Southgate decides that Trent's going to play at right wing back, then he's got a decision to make on the left, and maybe he does start with Trippier on the left, and Luke Shaw has to sit out. I mean, he's one of those players that I guess that fans from other nations around the world will look at and go, "How is this guy not playing in your team? Are England really that good that they can leave a player like Trent Alexander-Arnold out of the team?" Well, Southgate has done that consistently. Whether that changes in Qatar, we'll have to wait and see. But again, we're talking about players that Southgate trusts, and he hasn't shown that he fully trusts Alexander-Arnold for whatever reason that is. Whether it's because he feels that better players are in that position, or because he feels like he's not defensively switched on as much as other players. But he just hasn't played the games that we would have expected him to. So it wouldn't be a major surprise if Trent didn't start that first game.
Yeah, as you're talking, obviously, I'm looking at all the comments, everything regarding the England side and Trent Alexander-Arnold in particular. Like I said from the beginning, Southgate is such a loyalist to the system as opposed to the other way around that it doesn't surprise me that Trent Alexander-Arnold, to answer the question, wouldn't start in this game. I think a lot of it depends as well on Kyle Walker's fitness, of course, as well, and how that back three at the back will look. But it'll be interesting to see. The fact is, Trent Alexander is in the squad. He's going to Qatar. Here's another one here, Rob. Who are the three players in the 26 that are there to be good influences? I wonder what you mean. Do you mean like, you can't go out for a beer? I mean, we definitely know that can't happen in Qatar. So I'm imagining on the pitch, right? Somebody that's a good influence on the pitch and in the dressing room. Any names in this England squad that you think, you're here not just because you're a talented player, but you can really create a good vibe around the three lines?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point because that's been something that Gareth Southgate has been really, really keen to build. In the past, England squads have been accused of being too divided, whether it's divided between Manchester United and Liverpool players or letting club allegiances get in the way of how that unit bonds on international duty. And Southgate has been very, very keen, from the minute that he came in, really, to kind of get rid of all that. And he has talked about players being good tourists. And one of those is Connor Cody. there have been squads in the past where you look at Conor Cody and think, is this guy really one of the best defenders in England? And there is a debate around that. In fairness to him, he's had a great season at Everton. That move from Wolves in the summer has worked out really well. He's played regularly at Everton. Everton at one stage in the Premier League had the best defensive record, and that was in large part down to Conor Cody's performances. So he's probably in there on merit anyway. But certainly he's a player that Southgate has identified in the past as a good tourist, a guy who is great in the dressing room, who is great in the team hotel, in the games room with all the other players, and really bonds that group together. And we're talking about very, very fine details at this level. And people may be listening to this and go, how are you bringing the guy who's just like the good guy in the dressing room? Well, it's important. It's important that there's a good vibe and a good atmosphere in the dressing room, because they're going to be there for a long time. Hopefully, they're going to be in Qatar for the best part of 6 weeks. So you need players like that to keep the atmosphere high, and they spend an awful lot of time together. There's not a lot to do outside training. They won't be allowed to go out the hotel that much because Doha is so tight and compact. So it's important to have these guys, and certainly Conor Cody is central to that. Yeah,
absolutely correct. Victories in a tournament, especially the World Cup, are not just won on the pitch. They're won before, during, after. And to your point, this is a training camp. This is a tournament where you go away. You don't have the luxury of having your home support. Specifically when you think about Euro 2020, you kind of have that 12th man the entire time. The entire nation was behind you. These are alien territories, and you need those players. My answer will probably be, I think Jordan Pickford is one of them. He clearly shows it all the time. I think this is actually a massive reason. I know, and obviously you have a lot of input here, but the Harry Maguire situation, I think that's partly why also he's here as well. He is, for better or worse, I would imagine a very good teammate. I'm always thinking about the spine of a team. So you need those voices all over, at the back, in the midfield, and up front. And, you mentioned Conor Cody and obviously Harry Kane, leading the way up front. So there's a lot of good voices here. It's all about coming collectively, and not forgetting, Rob, that this is also, there's a few young players in here that are probably going to need some help. Let's keep going with these questions. Some good ones, by the way. Thank you, everybody, as we talk about. Don't worry, we're going to get to it. I know you want to know, obviously, US, England, who wins it. Well, from a bias perspective, I can already tell you what I think was going to happen, but let's keep going here. Realistic expectations for England at the World Cup. Rob, I just mentioned, recently what they've done in tournaments, the final Euro 2020. Gareth Southgate took this team to the semifinals of the World Cup in Russia. That was the furthest since Sir Bobby Robson did it, back in 1990. So, there are some good elements here, but it's 2022. This group may not be as simple as they may think. And then depending on who they face in the knockout stages, it could get tricky very indeed. What are realistic expectations do you think for the Three Lions and Gareth Southgate?
I think after reaching the semi-finals in Russia in 2018 and then the final of the Euros in 2021, that they really should be looking to win it. I don't think it's particularly outrageous to look at a team that have achieved that over the last 4 years and say that this is a team that really should be looking to win it. That said, this is a much tougher tournament than the Euros. The group is very tight. They're going to do well to get out of that. They really need to top that group. Get through the second round, and then you start running into the big boys in the quarterfinals, and you start looking at the likes of, is it going to be sort of Holland or Argentina or teams like that? Were they to get to beyond the quarterfinals, I think that would be a good tournament. I don't think Gareth Southgate would admit that, because he wants to win it. He will be saying that he's there to win it and he wants to get to the final, given what they've done in the past. But I think if England can get beyond the quarterfinals, they will have done very, very well. And that's not to do with any deficiencies that England may have, although that they head into the tournament on a poor run of form, really, in what's happened in the last couple of months. Just the strength of the other teams, the likes of Argentina, France, Brazil, these squads are absolutely stacked with world-class players, and they're going to do very, very well to get to the last four, I think.
Yeah, I've said it from the very beginning, Rob, to some of your points that you just mentioned. The thing about this World Cup, more so than any other World Cup, I think the difference between the true World Cup champion contenders, right? Brazil, Argentina, France, England, you can include in there, Germany, of course, Spain, and everybody else, this is the thinnest it's ever been. There's quality absolutely everywhere. You have to top this group, because if you top the group, England, then I'm not saying there's obviously easier, harder matches, anything can happen in knockout stages, but then you start thinking about you can face either a Senegal, possibly without Sadio Mane, a repeat against Denmark, and you wouldn't have to really face a real tough competitor till later. So you have to top this group, I think. I think that would be the expectations for England. Let's talk about the midfielders and the attackers, because we talked a lot about the defenders, and here they are on the screen. Jude Bellingham, Conor Gallagher, Jordan Henderson, Mason Mount, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice. Pretty remarkable to see a few names there. Conor Gallagher, a nice little surprise for Chelsea fans, of course. But Rob, give me your thinking here. James Ward-Prowse is not in here. Calvin Phillips has only played like 30 seconds of football. Talk to me about this midfield side.
Yeah, Conor Gallagher is a little bit of a surprise. He's not played regularly for Chelsea this season, although he has played a bit more regularly very, very recently. Calvin Phillips, it is a surprise in one sense, given that he's been injured, and even before his injury, wasn't really playing for City. I think before the Carabao Cup game against Chelsea, he played 14 minutes for City this season, which tells you that that he just not really played at all. I think everyone else really is worthy of their place. I think the one crucial selection issue that Southgate is going to have to solve is whether he picks Jude Bellingham from the start. If we're looking at Gareth Southgate, who in the past has appeared quite cautious as England manager, that maybe you pair Jordan Henderson and Declan Rice in midfield, I think England fans would love to see Jude Bellingham in there.
Would you start him? I would start Jude Bellingham.
I think so. He's formed for Borussia Dortmund this season, particularly in the Champions League.
One of the best players in the world, and
yeah.
never mind young players. I would start him from the get-go. I
think he should. He certainly deserves it, and I think that's going to be one of the selection issues for that first game that England fans are really going to look at. If Gareth Southgate picks Jordan Henderson and Declan Rice, they're going to expect quite a cautious approach to the rest of the World Cup. Southgate can really set a tone in that first game by picking Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham, despite his age, his relative lack of experience on the international stage, he deserves to play in that first game.
Yeah, 100%. Just some stats here, by the way, courtesy of our great team in the background here. The most goals and assists from English players in the Premier League since the start of 2021-22 season. Harry Kane, obviously, with 38. James Maddison, 30, 28 for Saka. Toney, 27. Mount, 25. Jared Bowen, who's not in here, 24. And Phil Foden, 23. Let's talk about the attackers now to wrap this up. Phil Foden, not a surprise. Jack Grealish, not a surprise. James Maddison, we've talked about. Marcus Rashford, Rob Dawson, Bukayo Saka, Raheem Sterling, and Callum Wilson, whose recent form for Newcastle means he's in. Ivan Toney's not there. Tammy Abraham is not there. Thoughts on this attacking side, the attacking options for Southgate?
Yeah, aside from Maddison, the biggest surprise probably is Callum Wilson. Not that he hasn't played well for Newcastle. Newcastle have done very well this season. Wilson scored 6 goals in 10 games already this season. He was probably up against Ivan Toney at Brentford, who scored 8 in 13. I think the big issue probably before Southgate selected the squad was Wilson's injury record. His injury record is not great, and he's already had one spell on the sidelines this season. England fans may look at this and think, well, Kane's going to start every game anyway. Wilson isn't going to have to play that often. Well, judging by Antonio Conte's comments about Kane after the Carabao Cup tie with Nottingham Forest, he's suggesting that Kane is already tired. And that's before the World Cup even kicks off. So if you take those comments on face value, can you expect Kane to play 90 minutes every single game in Qatar? Well, probably not. So Wilson is going to have to play. Southgate will just hope that Wilson holds up injury-wise. I suppose that if something was to happen to Wilson, he will probably look at the squad and think, well, you've got Marcus Rashford in there who likes to play on the left-hand side of a front three to cut in on his right foot, but who can also play as a centre-forward and has played as a centre-forward this season for Man United in the absence of Cristiano Ronaldo on occasion. So there are options there. And it's not to say that Wilson doesn't deserve his place in the squad. He certainly does. He's done the business this season for Newcastle, scoring 6 goals. I think even Ivan Toney, can think of himself as a little bit unlucky. He's also
systematic, isn't it, Rob? Don't you think? Because you mentioned something there before we talk about the others and we wrap up here. Thank you, everybody. By the way, Tammy Abraham, Southgate said, and I'm reading this quote because it has a lot to do with what we're about to discuss here. But Southgate said, Tammy's had a had a poor run of scoring form at the wrong time. Form could be more important. That's very interesting from Gareth Southgate talking about form, because, you know, we can look all over this squad and there's a lot of players here that have not had good form. And if you want to base it on form alone, I think that could be interesting and complex. And it might be coming back to bite Gareth Southgate at the end. But to your point about Callum Wilson, the issue for me is that if something happens to Harry Kane, it's not just about, you know, holding form, but holding that ball. Harry Kane is very good as well as bringing players in from the outside. Callum Wilson likes to play off the last defender. You know, it's a bit different. So to your point about Marcus Rashford and other players, they might have to do jobs they don't naturally like to do. That's, you know, that to me is the key. Let's wrap this up by any other thoughts on the attacking side. Marcus Rashford, I mean, it's great to see him. I mean, if we're talking about form, recently he's been good. Phil Foden, of course, in there as well. Raheem Sterling. Is there any? Ivan Toney is a damn shame, Rob. But is there anybody else do you see here that, okay, I'm happy with this? Do you see the goals coming from this attacking lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I think the squad just shows that Gareth Southgate's got more options up front than he has at the back. I mean, we've not even spoken about Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho's been nowhere near this squad. You're talking about a £75 million winger who's playing for Man United. That just shows you that the lack of speculation or talk around Sancho being in the squad just shows you that there are far more options for Southgate up front than there are at the back. You know, it was never expected that, say, Harry Maguire would be absent, even though he's not played for Man United at all. Southgate has just got far more options up front than he has at the back. And you know, he's probably mentioned the form of Tammy Abraham, because form, when you're picking amongst a big pool of attackers, form does come into it, which means that Wilson, which means that Maddison are both in, but at the back, it means that Walker's in and Maguire's in, because he just hasn't got those same options.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to read everybody a stat here from our own ESPN UK. Fikayo Tomori has had more successful tackles than any other English centre-back in Europe's top 5 leagues since the start of last season, not even this season. But apparently he's not good enough. I'm going to beat the Fikayo Tomori drum until it kills me. But there you have it. The England squad, the final 26, is set for the World Cup in Qatar. And England, have a group to deal with, including, of course, the US, Wales, and, of course, Iran. Very quickly, predictions on England-USA. What do you think, Rob?
I think it's going to be very tight with one goal in it, England to win 1-0, because the US just don't score goals.
Yep, I agree. And that's what happens when you don't select Ricardo Pepi, USMNT fans. But there you have it. The England team is set for the World Cup. We'll have to find out just how far they indeed go in the tournament.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.